Hello everyone. In this module 16, we are going to learn about moral development in children. After completion of this module, you will be able to know about the moral developmental stage and understand the moral development of children, and you may identify the importance of moral development in children. Okay, let's see the moral development of children. The morality and sociality appear to be interrelated, and socialized individual in a real sense of the term is a person with good moral character. The many social traits from the basis of moral values and ethics in behavior also. So the education is equally concerned with ethical values and moral education in all aspects of education. Let me discuss about the stages in the moral development. The stages in the moral development, further they classified a prudential stage, authoritarian stage, social stage and personal stage. We will discuss about these stages in very deeply. That the psychologists mention the 4 stages of moral development in children. In the first stage is known as the prudential stage. That the prudential stage, that is nothing but the children's behavior are regulated through the pleasure and pain. Children's behavior is regulated through the pleasure and pain. Children learn those behavior that are rewarded and avoided those who are punished. So that the children learn those who behaviors that are reward and avoid those who are punished. The second stage is authoritarian stage. That the authoritarian stage in which children follow the directions of his elders like parents, teachers, brothers and sisters who have a dominating influence over the children. So that is called as the authoritarian stage. And the third stage is the social stage. That those social stage in which children's behavior is governed by the social acceptance. So that the children's behavior is governed by social acceptance. So that that may be the social acceptance or social rejections. The children try to behave in their conformity with social expectations. The level of moral development in most of us are stagnant at this stage. Next one is the highest stage of the moral development is the personal stage. The highest stage of the moral development is the personal stage. The personal stage in which individuals' behavior is influenced by his conviction of high morals and ethics. Even if the whole society opposes him, they will be steadfast in actions, and if he thinks his action is highly ethical, and he will be courageous and in his convictions. Then the Jean Piaget and Lawrence Kohlberg have put forward the development theory of morality, and that Piaget distinguishes the moral realisms and moral relativisms. Young children are a moral realists who interpret the moral rules and look at the material sides of the actions and their magnitude, and ignoring the intentions of the acts. Next, if we suppose the child is asked to pass the normal judgment to acts, and in the first case the child breaks 2 teacups while attempting to reach stealthily the sweets kept over the cupboard, and in the second case a servant maid breaks into a 4 teacups, the clue to the carelessness while receiving to the visiting guest. So that the child will hold the servant maid as the more guilty than stealing the child's of the magnitude of the act. So for that, breaking a more number of teacups. Okay. Only about 11 to 12-year children do become capable of moral relativisms. They are now capable to decenter and think of several qualities at once, and they have overcome their egocentrism by becoming aware that the people may have different points of view, and consequently they take into account motives and circumstances in making moral judgments. So after the age of 12, the children behave in a conciliatory and forgiving way. Then Lawrence Kohlberg Lawrence Kohlberg's theory, moral development is based on the Piaget general theory and cognitive development. It's entirely depends on the assimilations and the accommodations. Lawrence Kohlberg believes that also. So because of this two things discussed in the Jean Piaget's cognitive development. So because of a moral development is based on the cognitive development. Okay. In the level of pre-conventional level, Kohlberg regards it's based on the desire to avoid punishments and gain rewards. At level 1, there is no internalization of moral standards. At level 2, the level although the child identifies with the parents and conforms to what they regard as right and wrong is the motive to conform rather than the ethical standards that have been internalized. And it is only the 3, the post-conventional level, the major judgment is rational and internalized and that conducted in controlled by an internalized ethical code and relatively independent of the approval of castigation and of others. And this is level of moral conflict resolved in terms of broad ethical principles, and violating these principles result in guilt and self-contaminations. Like Jean Piaget also speaks of maturations as the basis of moral growth, but mere maturations may not help one to reach the higher level of morality. The individual must undergo the life experiences that specially confront him with the more complex of moral dimensions and with his realities of the social systems in which he lives. The points of his relevance in planning a course of moral education, and the Kohlberg advocates the experience of some basic or universal moral values, as all normal children everywhere go through the same stages at cognitive development of interact the socially essentially the same ways. Okay, thank you viewers, thank you for watching. An upcoming video is also helps to understand the moral development in a child development. Okay.
The question arises that what is moral development? For understanding the moral development, we have to first know what is the meaning of the word moral. The word moral is derived from a Latin word mores, which means manners, customs or folkways. Moral development is one of the most important developmental dimensions of human being. Moral development means the ability to discriminate between what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, and to do behavior accordingly. Thus, moral development means moral behavior, and it is an essential quality of the total personality of the individual. Moral behavior means behavior which is in conformity with the moral code of the social group. The child has to learn what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. The child has also to learn his duty. It means that morality is linked with the social relationship and the social process. In short, it can be said that morality is linked with the social system of an individual. Human beings are neither moral or immoral by birth. Their moral behavior is molded by the parents, friends, relatives, neighbors, classmates, members of the society, as well as by the teachers. Moral development includes characteristics of honesty, truthfulness, trustworthiness, self-respect, respect of elders, righteousness, self-control, duty consciousness, compassion in the child. According to Zandon, 1978, moral development refers to a process by which children adopt principles that lead them to evaluate given behaviors as right and wrong and to govern their own action in terms of their principles. Barron 2001 defined moral development as changes in the capacity to reason about rightness or wrongness of various actions that occur with age. Moral development can be said that it is a process through which children develop proper attitude and behavior towards other people in the society based on social and cultural norms, rules and laws. Thus, we can say that in moral development, a child learns the rules and laws of the society, which helps him to differentiate between right and wrong behavior. Rules and laws learned in the moral development determines the behavior of the person, and process of moral development gets strengthened with the increase in age. Next, we come the features of moral development. Actually, the features of moral development are different in different stages. In infancy, the features of child moral development are: at the time of birth, the child is neither moral or immoral. His moral self is developed as a result of sanctions and punishments provided by the parents. In schools, teachers develop desirable conduct through approval or disapproval of their behavior and by providing worth experiences. During childhood, the features of moral development are: the peer group plays a very important role in developing moral behavior in childhood. Secondly, moral behavior is strengthened by the reward and punishment received by parents and teachers. And thirdly, children follow the social and cultural norms and codes. Now, the next thing we have to discuss in moral development is the dimensions or components of moral development. Actually, there are three dimensions of moral development. The first is the emotional dimension, the second, behavioral dimension, and the third is the cognitive dimension. Now, we'll be discussing these dimensions in detail. Now, first thing is emotional dimension. Emotional component or emotional dimension is one of the most important dimension of moral development because it is the emotion or the feelings of a person which make him realize the sorrow of others and to feel guilty if he himself is the reason of sorrow of others. The second is the behavioral dimension. It is the second important dimension of moral development and it refers to behavior and its consequences. The consequences of behavior done by the child motivates him to learn moral values. For example, suppose if a child has done any moral behavior and he gets reward for that, then he will learn that behavior and it will lead to his moral development. And suppose if a child has done something immoral or he has done an immoral behavior and he gets punishment for that, then he will not try to do that immoral behavior again. The third is the cognitive dimension. If a child has a social understanding, then he can take correct decision about right and wrong behavior. Cognitive maturity and social experiences helps in the development of moral behavior. Thus, all the three dimensions, the emotional, the behavioral and the cognitive, all the three dimensions are interrelated. Next thing in moral development is the phases of moral development. Actually, moral development takes place in two phases. First is the development of moral behavior and the second is the development of moral concepts. Development of moral behavior. Actually, moral behavior means behaving in a socially approved manner. Children learn socially approved manner or behavior through direct teaching or through trial and error. The second phase is development of moral concepts. The second phase consists of learning of moral concepts or principles of right and wrong. Moral concepts actually reflects moral behavior. Now, further, we will discuss about the elements of moral development. Actually, moral development is a slow and a long-term process which extends to adolescence. In learning to be moral, there are four essential elements. The first is learning what the social group expects of its members as laid in laws, customs and rules. In every social group are certain rules, customs and every member of the group are expected to follow them. These laws and rules are for the welfare of all. The second element is developing a conscience to act as an internal control over the individual's behavior. No child is born with morality or immorality, but they have to learn it by developing a conscience. They also have to use this conscience as a control over their behavior or as a guideline for their behavior. The third is learning to experience guilt and shame when the individual's behavior fails to conform to the expectations of the group. If a behavior done by a child is not in conformity with the set laws and rules of the society, the child feels guilt and shame. The fourth is having opportunity for social interactions to learn what members of the group expect. The child must get opportunity to interact with the members of the group. Social interaction plays a very important role in moral development. Social intelligence provides children the standard of socially approved behavior, and it also provides them with a source of motivation. Social intelligence starts with the family. Child learns from parents, siblings, and family members.